أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والضحى والليل إذا سجى ما ودعك ربك وما قلاه وللآخرة خير لك من الأولى ولسوف يعطيك ربك فترضى ألم يجدك يتيما فآوى ووجدك ضالا فهدى ووجدك عائلا فأغنى فأما اليتيم فلا تقهر وأما السائل فلا تنهر وأما بنعمة ربك فحدث صدق الله العلي العظيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا أبينا نبينا أبي القاسم المصطفى المحمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين سيما بقية الله في الأرضين. If I could ask everybody, wherever you are, whoever's listening, to give a loud and boisterous salawat wherever you are. First and foremost, I'd like to say Assalamu alaikum to all the dear brothers and sisters and respected elders, whoever has joined us today. May Allah bless you wherever you are. And I'd like to start by telling you that, look, you have no idea how important you are potentially. It's the 16th of April, Thursday, 16th of April, 2020, and I'm speaking from the HQ, the holy city of Qom. Now, if you're listening, then you are the resistance. I'd also like to thank Brother Ahfad for convincing me to do this. I mean, something like this has been on my mind. Obviously, we are all aware that the world is going through an incredible transitionary phase right now. We might be a little bit hazy and we might not know the details, but all of us have a gut feeling and we know that the world has changed and it is never going back to the way it was before. Shaheed Qasim Soleimani, his shahada took place, then millions poured out into the streets in Iran and globally, then event after event after event, and here we are in our homes talking online. All of this is leading up to something great. Now, we don't know whether it's going to get worse before it gets better or whether it's just going to get better. But at the end of the day, we know that something great is around the corner. And by any means necessary, we need to be prepared for that. And that's why I've taken a little bit of time to prepare this thing that I'd like to call it a survival kit for anyone who is living in the West, particularly in the West, but it applies to wherever you are. If there's brothers or sisters anywhere in the world, it's going to apply to you. And this is targeting specifically the youth, but it can apply to others as well. There's 7 things that I want to discuss. These 7 things are 7 things that we need to prioritize. By hook or by crook, we need to prioritize these 7 things. If we want to help the cause of Islam and the cause of Imam Mahdi, then these 7 things are pivotal in our lives. Some of these things, by the way, may sound a little bit cliched, and some of these things may sound controversial. They might sound cliched because you've heard them over and over and over again, but they really are important. And the reason that I'm emphasizing them now is because now more than ever before, we have a dire need for it. Brothers and sisters, respected elders, we are out of time. And without further ado, I'd like to ask you to give another loud and boisterous salawat wherever you are, and we'll begin. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The first thing, dear brothers and sisters, respected elders, is you need to get a connection with the Qur'an. You need to become connected with the Qur'an now. Now, the world in which we're living is incredibly confusing. All right, there's new things happening all the time, news coming from here and there. The mainstream is telling us one thing. Then you have conspiracy theorists on one side, they're saying another thing. Then you have crazy conspiracy theorists who are going way further and they're just saying things which are completely wrong. There's a middle path that we need to find. But how can you find that middle path when you're in this confusing world and you're surrounded by so many different opinions? The Qur'an, dear brothers and sisters, respected elders, the Qur'an is that key. It is urwatul wuthqa. It's that firm grip. It is the rope of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If we cling onto it, then we're going to find our way through this storm that we now find ourselves in. If we do not connect to it, then we're going to be lost. Whichever way you want to look at it, if we are not connected to it, we're going to be lost. Okay. Now, there's reasons why we haven't connected to the Qur'an. And I'm not just talking about myself or just you guys who are listening, but I'm talking about the Ummah generally. We have not connected to the Qur'an. As the Ummah, we have abandoned it. It says, وَقَالَ الرَّسُولُ يَا رَبِّي هَذَا إِنَّ قَوْمِ اتَّخِذُوا هَذَا الْقُرْآنَ مَهْجُورًا. The Qur'an tells us that the Prophet cried out and complained, "Oh my Lord, this qawm of mine, these people of mine have abandoned the Qur'an. They've rendered it a forsaken thing." Now we have to think about that for a moment, because here the Qur'an is not talking about Christians or Jews or polytheists or mushrikeen. No, it's talking about the people of the Holy Prophet himself. So we have to really reflect and think about it. Are we connected to the Quran or not? And if we're not, why not? Look at where the Quran is being used in our societies. It's being used as a sort of gap filler. And I'm sure we've all noticed this. It's something that we do that we're reciting the Quran, for instance, when we're walking into the hall, when nobody's really paying any attention. It's a gap filler. It's something that you do when somebody passes away. And obviously, recently, people have started to pass away. And what automatically happens is people recite Surah Yasin and people recite different juz. I got a juz of the Quran to recite the other day because of a relative, because of a dear loved one in the community who had passed away. And these things are good, but if we just break it down for a moment, what is a book? It's not something that we're supposed to only recite for thawab, for divine reward, but rather something that's supposed to help us to understand. Understand what? Understand that there is a rhythm to life. There is a rhythm that is flowing through the universe and everything. And Allah, out of His infinite mercy, wants us to get in sync with that rhythm. If we get in sync with it, then we'll start to understand certain things. The way that one of my teachers described this is the Quran is a love letter from God. A love letter from God. Now, just think about this for a moment. How would you treat a love letter? A love letter is something that you would hold close to you. You'd open it every spare moment that you get just to sneak a glance at it, You would smell its pages. You'd keep it under your pillow at night. A love letter. But it's not from any random spouse, potential spouse. It's from God. It's from your creator. And yet, this very book, if we just analyze our own lives for a moment, how much have we rendered this Qur'an mahjura? We've just left it on our shelves. There's certain ways that we have engaged with the Qur'an, but that too has been a superficial engagement. I'll give you some examples. For example, we pick up the Qur'an, and this is an issue which both the Shi'as and the Sunnis have. We'll pick up the Qur'an and we won't just open it and try to understand, what does Allah have to say to me now? It's a love letter from God, right? You want to just open it and find out, what is the message that Allah has for me today, right now, in this situation. But instead of doing that, instead of opening up our hearts to Allah's message, what many of us have done, and I've been victim to this as well, but what many of us have done is we go through the Qur'an and you start picking out all those verses. For example, the Shi'as will find all the verses that are about Imam Ali. This verse, this verse, this verse, this verse. All the verses which will help me to prove myself in certain arguments. Sunnis will do similar things as well, right? So this is just superficial and for polemical reasons, just so that you can win others in debates. That's not the purpose of the Qur'an. Another way that we recite the Qur'an is, like I mentioned, when people pass away. Or, you know, when certain things happen, we just recite Surah Yasin. But that's not the purpose of the Qur'an. We need to teach ourselves to engage with it much more, because in this sea of confusion, we are going to get lost unless we stay connected to it. And I just want to share a personal experience with you so that you can understand that when we're told by certain great scholars that the Qur'an doesn't just reflect in, it doesn't just stay hollow, but rather it actually reflects in our actions and in the way that we carry ourselves. And I want to give you a personal story. So I used to get into a lot of debates with people, and this is beautiful. This is one of the ways that you can learn more about the religion and you can progress as a Muslim. But sometimes, you know, discussions and arguments and debates with people just aren't fruitful. They don't lead you anywhere. A lot of the time you spend is wasted. It's wasted in trying to get people to just think on the right tracks before you can explain a concept to them or before you can get them to understand something. And you'll understand this from experience. And for those who have just tuned in, by the way, we're talking about 7 things which constitute the kind of the survival guide or the survival kit for Muslims living in the West in these trying times. And the first of them, which we're expanding on right now, is getting connected to the Qur'an, for those who have just tuned in. Okay, so I was debating with numerous people and I was thinking, you know, this isn't really fruitful. So we're just not getting anywhere. Usually what happens is, you know, if you're debating with an open mind and you're doing it to try to understand, you'll usually get somewhere. Some people you don't get anywhere. Anyway, I bumped into a brother and I start debating with him and he beats me and then I beat him. And then, you know, we start to get somewhere and we start to discover new things. And I kid you not, in the middle of the discussion, I went, hold on a second. I checked over my shoulders. Hold on a moment. Do you read the Qur'an? And he looks at me and he goes, yeah, I do. Do you? And I said, yeah, I do. And it was such a strange, bizarre, weird experience to go through, where we were expressing this glee at having found each other and having been connected, both of us, to the Qur'an. You see, and what I discovered on that day is that there is a certain wavelength, and those who recite the Qur'an regularly and are connected, they come into that frequency and that wavelength, and anybody else who is also on that wavelength will be able to recognize those people. And anybody, and this is most people are not in sync with that wavelength, so they just won't ever get it. Even now, as we're talking about this issue and we're discussing how important the Qur'an is, And people listening right now are not going to take this advice on board. And one of the reasons for this is that the Qur'an just isn't relevant for us. It just, we don't admit it, but it's not something which we find relevant to ourselves. You see, the Qur'an will become relevant for those people who are muttaqi. The second chapter of the Holy Qur'an, it says, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابَ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. This is a book, this is the book. There is no discrepancy or crookedness therein. A guidance for who? For the muttaqeen, for those who are God conscious. You have to become God conscious first, then the Quran starts to open up and speak to you. Very, very important for us to do that. Just one last thing on the point of the Quran, and it deserves to be spent, this subject deserves a heck of a lot more time, but for now, we're just going to mention this, that the Quran, don't rush to finish it. This is my personal advice, and in fact, it doesn't matter what I think. Imam Ali alayhi salam, he said, do not rush to finish the chapter. How often do we find ourselves doing that, dear brothers and sisters, respected elders? We find ourselves rushing to try to finish a chapter. Don't do it. Stop. Just contemplate on a word. Just look at a sentence. Look at the structure of that sentence. Try to understand. Try to visualize. Good teachers, may Allah bless him, he actually mentioned this, that you don't read the Quran, don't just read it, visualize it. Visualize the Quran. Try to see the Quran. When it's talking about any concept, don't just take it at face value, dive deeper. Everything in the Quran has an esoteric, deep dimension. Oh, just very quickly, when I'm saying to engage with the Quran and to try to understand it and read it as a book, and I'm saying, open the Quran randomly. Just open it randomly onto any page, and it will have a message for you at the time in which you are opening the book, right? The moment you open it, any time in the day where you feel confused about something, or you feel happy, or you feel sad, anything, open up the Quran. See what Allah has in store for you. And whatever verse your eyes first fall upon, that is precisely the message that Allah has in store for you. You can try it right now as you're listening to me. Open up the Quran. Do it. Open it up and you will see. And the reason that I'm speaking about this so confidently is because I've experienced it. This is the only word in English that I could think of to describe what the Quran is magic. And that makes sense, because whenever the disbelievers would hear the Quran being recited, they would refer to the Prophet as Sahirun Mubin. He's just a magician. They just thought that the Quran is bewitching them. Now, many of us have not experienced that. It is not just about the sound, although the sound is beautiful and it does help you to get synced with life, the universe and everything. And it does help you to get synced with Allah. But it is not just about the sound. It's about the meaning as well. And to illustrate this point, I just want to show you that last night I was anticipating this live discussion. This is my first live discussion. So I was like, okay, Allah, is this the right thing for me to do? How should I approach it? How should I talk to the brothers and sisters and respected elders out there in the West and other places as well? And I just wanted a bit of guidance about the context in which we live. I opened the Quran onto a random page. It landed on Surah Al-Araf, and I'm going to read you the English, right? It says, all right, so this is what the Quran opened up on, right? Bear in mind the context in which we're talking right now and the reason for which we are now communicating online like this. And bear in mind the hadith of the Ahlul Bayt of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, where he says that before the zuhur of al-Qa'im al-Mahdi, knowledge will go out of Qum. Well, knowledge will first leave Kufa as a snake disappears in the grass, and then it will arrive, knowledge will arrive in a land called Qum. and it will become the center of knowledge and merits. This will be before the uprising of Imam al-Mahdi. Bear that in mind, and then look what the Qur'an told me last night. I'm just reading the English. So we sent against them a flood and locusts, lice, frogs, and blood as distinct signs, but they acted arrogantly, and they were a guilty lot. Whenever a plague fell upon them, they would say, "O Moses, invoke your Lord for us by the covenant he has made with you. If you remove the plague from us, we will certainly believe in you, and let the children of Israel go along with you." But when we had removed the plague from them until a term that they should have completed, behold, they broke their promise. Okay. And this is no surprise for me that it would land on such a verse when I open the Qur'an completely randomly, because this is something that I have experienced on numerous occasions, and we can talk about that another time, inshallah. But just to round off the conversation on the Qur'an, don't read it to finish it. If you arrive at any verse where it makes you contemplate, just think about it for a moment. And then, and one more point on the Qur'an. There's so many beautiful Qur'an apps out there. Use them, all right? So when you're waiting for something, maybe you've put something into the microwave, right? Maybe maybe you're waiting for, maybe some advertisements popped up. Any spare moment that you have in the day, open up the Qur'an, see what Allah has in store for you. Okay, that was the first thing. The second thing, brothers and sisters, respected elders, you need to work together. So number one was Qur'an. The second thing is work together, be united. First and foremost as Muslims, then as Muslims and Christians, and then as humanity in general, right? Unite together, stay together, do not become divided. The Holy Qur'an tells us, وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. Hold firm to the rope of Allah all together and be not divided. It is a very general rule. It is very clear at the same time as deep, that it's just common sense that people need to stay together. You guys need to stick together. And the reason I'm saying this is, I'm not just saying to stick together. I'm saying you need to work together. As we started this off by saying that you are potentially the resistance. We do not know what tomorrow holds. We do not know what is going to happen in the very near future, let alone a year from now, let alone 10 years from now. You need to build your relationships together, and you need to stick together. And you need to have pride in being a Muslim first and foremost. When I'm saying unity, I'm saying be united as Muslims first before you unite with anybody else. The Holy Qur'an tells us, Muhammad Rasulullah, وَالَّذِينَ مَعَهُ أَشِدَّاءُ عَلَى الْكُفَّارِ رُحْمَا بَيْنَهُمْ. Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam is the messenger of God, and those with him, those who are on his path. Notice how it doesn't use necessarily the word Muslim even. It just says those who are with the Prophet. They are firm against the disbelievers, and they are compassionate between themselves, among themselves. Compassionate, dear brothers. So first of all, we have this concept of being firm against the disbelievers. Now, on one level, this may mean just the general kuffar, but look, it means the enemies of Islam. And look, if you still, and we're going to discuss more about what it means to recognize the enemies. But for now, you need to know that they exist, right? And you need to be firm against them. What's happening a lot of the time is that we are being firm amongst ourselves and compassionate with the disbelievers. This is not the common practice. This is not the general outline of the Qur'an. This is not a principle that we live by. We should be compassionate amongst each other. Notice how the Qur'an uses the word ruhma, to be compassionate, to be merciful. It's not good enough to just know each other, but you have to really love each other. One of the things which stops us from showing this love to each other is hard-heartedness and fear. We're actually afraid that if I open up my heart to this brother, then he might end up stabbing me in the back. And we have this perpetual fear, even if we never spell it out. We need to overcome this fear. ألا إن أولياء الله لا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون. As for the allies of Allah, or the guardians appointed by Allah, or the friends of Allah, as for these specific awliya, there is no fear for them, nor do they grieve. We need to get over these fears because they've all been planted in our minds by shaitan. Stick together, work together. Number 3, and this is one of those pivotal points that really, if this lecture could be grounded on 2 things, it would probably be this point. You need to be connected to a person, to an individual who will guide us through these turbulent times. There is a world of confusion out there. And the enemies that are existing, and they are very mushakhas, it's very clear who they are, will do everything in their power to destroy your faith and to divide you and to attack you. If not from the left side, then from the right side, from behind and from above. This is what the shaitan does, right? And you are being attacked, and you need to recognize that. In these times, you need to have a united strategy. Who is it that is going to set that strategy when it comes to socio-political dynamics? And by that, I mean everything that is going on in the Muslim world. Who sets the agenda? You need to know who that person is. It is none other than Imam Khamenei, the Wali al-Faqih, right? And this is not an Iranian issue. One of the things that that some of the brothers and sisters do, they get confused and they say, this is about Iran. Oh, no, brothers and sisters, let me tell you right now, I'm not paid by the Iranian government. I'm not Iranian. I don't have any Iranian blood. I have nothing to do with the country of Iran. I believe there's a quote from Imam Khomeini where he says, let Iran burn as long as Islam survives, right? It's not about Iran. It's about the place, the center, the headquarters. It's about where that center point and that fortress is and who is leading it. And in today's world, it is none other than Imam Sayyid Ali Khamenei. We need to be connected to him. And being connected to the leader, the very least that we can say about that is, when you hear that he has said something, trust it, and just trust it. Just trust it, right? And when he sets a direction, go with that direction. There is a quote that we've heard, that I haven't heard, but Sheikh Osama Abdul Ghani has heard it and Sheikh Shabir has heard it, from the mouth of Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah himself. And he said that, look, just as in the past, the Holy Prophet said, if you see all the people going into one valley and you see Imam Ali alayhi salam going into another valley, you go into that valley because that will be the right path, right? And Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah says, in today's world, if you see all of the scholars and all of the Maraji going into one valley and you see Imam Sayyid Ali Khamenei going into another valley, you should go into that valley. And some people have played off this quote and tried to say that, oh, you know what? They're just saying that, this is, guys, this is not a competition between Agha Sistani and Imam Khamenei. It's not competition, okay? Agha Khamenei is the Wali al-Faqih, which means, just to break it down, he has socio-political insight and he has the authority to give direction to the ummah at large when it comes to those issues. We need to be following those derivatives if we want to be revolutionaries and if we want to be followers of Imam Mahdi. Because I'm telling you, look at the way that the mainstream media has pulled a curtain over the eyes of the masses. Largely, people are completely blinded. Now, and I'm not saying that this is going to happen, but just try to picture it for a moment. If the enemies ever chose to bring about a false Messiah, a Dajjalic figure, and proclaim that this is the Mahdi, you can bet that most people will follow that, because the mainstream media has such incredible influence over people's minds and hearts, right? You need to have that voice who knows, who is connected to the Qur'an and the Ahadith, and who can guide us through that turbulent time, should it ever occur. And also, if Imam Mahdi Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif ever, if the zuhur, inshallah, it will happen in our lifetimes. Inshallah, it will happen in our lifetimes. And when and if it does, you can bet that the mainstream media and the enemies will do everything in their power to cut off your communication, to make sure that they brand him as a terrorist, that they brand him as a false messiah. They will confuse the masses. You need to have a connection to that voice of a wali who knows the Islamic texts, who knows Islam. And just to further emphasize on this point of the authenticity of Imam Khamenei, you probably all heard of this thing called the Majlis, or the Assembly of Experts, and these bodies which are put in place to basically keep an eye, so to speak, on the Rahbar. So he has approval from at least 80 of mujtahids of the highest eminence and caliber. At least. Okay, so another thing that we need to recognize is that the concept of wilayatul faqih, and it's not me that's saying this. Take Shahid Hujaji, for example, who should be an example for us. The shuhada who have given their lives to defend the shrine of Sayyidah Zainab, who gave their lives defending the lives of innocent people by fighting against the likes of ISIS and Daesh, right? These people, when they come and they testify and they say in their wills that they have arrived at yaqeen, at certainty, at absolute certainty, that Imam Khamenei is mutawassil, or connected directly to Imam Mahdi, we have to pay that some careful attention. Now, when it comes to the concept of wilayat al-faqih, and this is what I meant by some of these points having a dimension of controversy, this should not be controversial. It's 2020, guys. We need to wake up and we need to get connected to the right sources immediately. But this is what I meant about certain things that I'm going to mention being controversial, because look, there was a time that fell upon the ummah after the Ghaibat Kubra, after Imam al-Mahdi went into occultation, where people didn't understand the concept of marja'iyah, right? They even rejected the marjas and they said, no, only the Imam has the right to have certain authority over us. And it got to a point where people were actually burying their khums money. They buried their khums money because they didn't know what to do with it. And they thought, okay, we'll dig it up when Imam Mahdi returns. Then when they realized that the zuhur is taking actually longer, as by the way, there are hadith mentioned in Bihar al-Anwar, where the Holy Prophet actually mentioned, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the other imams also mentioned that the zuhur will be over an extended period of time. It will be a long time. But when it initially happened, people thought it's only going to be a few years and then we'll find him again, right? He'll reappear soon. Didn't happen. So people were burying their khums money. There's probably khums money out there which is just buried somewhere because these brothers back then didn't know what to do with it, right? Then we understood that no, marjas are representatives of Imam al-Hujjah, of the Ahlul Bayt in our time, and we need to give our khums money to them. And this is just a superficial example for us to try to understand this concept. Now we've moved into a different era where Shia Islam is not just some, branded as semi-heretical thing which doesn't really exist, and Muslims are actually running the show. Generally, Shias are just this weird cult that occasionally cries, but they don't really do anything else. No, Shia Islam has come out of the shadows now. The Islamic revolution hasn't only happened, but actually Imam Khamenei is now talking about the establishment of an Islamic civilization. An Islamic civilization. Just let that sink in for a moment. So here we have this kind of, in the West, we have this kind of takeover and the snatching away of people's liberties. And a lot of people are saying that it is actually moving towards the centralization of power. And I think it would be hard to find people who would not agree that this is all about the centralization of power. More and more power is falling into the hands of the taghut, of the tyrants, right? And there's always been this concept of the new world order, right? So you have that on one side. And then on the other side, you have Imam Khamenei talking about the new Islamic civilization. Just let that sink in for a moment and just think about where the world is headed and what your role is in all of that. Okay, so the first thing was connection to the Qur'an. The second thing was working together and being united. And the third thing is being connected to Imam Khamenei. Go to khamenei.ir. Check on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a regular basis. Just check what the leader is saying and get used to calling him the leader. We don't even call him Imam Khamenei amongst ourselves as Hausa students and the revolutionaries who exist out there. We just call him the leader.
We've got a lot of questions, so if you want to leave some time to answer.
I'm gonna try and wrap this up as quickly as I can.
Perfect.
In fact, I really, really wanted to open up the door for discussion. So we still have a few points to go through, but I think that's enough of a dose for today. So we've been through three things, guys. Connection to the Qur'an. The second thing was working together and being united. And the third thing is being connected to the leader, Imam Sayyid Ali Khamenei. And we'll go over the next four things in the next session, if Allah gives us the tawfiq, inshallah.